Since the dawn of fairy tale stories, Neverland was the favorite place for all the world's youngsters, as everyone who reached it lived happily ever after. For a long time, the island was ruled by Peter Pan, who was responsible for selecting new members to ensure that only the best individuals were sent there. Then a sinister man called Peter finishes reading the fairy tale to a little boy called Kevin, and says it's time to send him to Neverland. A few days later, in a small town in the UK, a boy was reported missing, along with dozens of other young people, and posters were put up around the area. Meanwhile, the population gathers to watch the spectacles of a large circus, which puts on various shows for its audience. Soon after, the mime begins his act, where he starts pointing at James, one of the young people in the audience, who receives a personalized balloon. During the night, the boy rests quietly at home, and his mother asks him to get ready for bed while she goes to take a shower. However, as soon as he is left alone, James ends up being surprised by the mime, who emerges from a hole in the ground. The man says that he got lost in that place and that he's feeling extremely scared because he believes he's going to get a scolding from his mother when he gets home. Confused, the boy explains that he is not allowed to talk to strangers, and gets up to get away from the intruder. When he hears this, the mime tells him that he was the one who gave James the balloon at the circus, saying that from now on, they can consider each other friends. Excited, the man reveals that his name is Peter, and after introducing himself, he explains that he can take the boy to a world full of dreams and magic, where there are no mothers or rules to get in the way. At that moment, the woman starts to hear the intruder's voice coming from the living room, and runs to check what's going on. Before he can capture his target, Peter is surprised by James's mother, who grabs him so that the boy isn't taken by the creature. Now that she has rescued the boy, the woman runs to the kitchen, and after asking her son to call the police, she grabs a knife to protect herself from the intruder. Carefully, she walks around the house looking for Peter, who makes a surprise attack, removing part of his victim's foot with the blade. Desperate, the woman falls to the ground, but when she hears the threats the mime is making to her son, she becomes enraged and lunges at him, striking several blows with the blade at her enemy. Despite this, Peter maneuvers to throw his opponent against the table, and uses various kitchen utensils around him to injure her more and more. Enraged at having his face destroyed, the mime strikes the woman on the head with a meat tenderizer, causing her to collapse. To finish her off, the criminal uses one of the kitchen knives for the final blow, putting an end to the woman. Peter then walks towards the boy, and before he can talk to the authorities, James ends up being captured by the mime, who says it's time for them to leave for Neverland. 15 years later, Wendy sits down to breakfast with her family and is told by her mother to take Michael to school, as it's his first day at school. Annoyed, the boy says he can ride his bike around town on his own, but Mary forbids him, saying he's not experienced enough to do it yet. Realizing that his school bus has arrived, John sets off in the direction of his school, and Wendy asks her brother to finish getting ready, as they have to leave before they are late for class. Before saying goodbye to her daughter, Mary tells her that she has found a letter from a university in her mailbox, and asks if the girl intends to stop studying abroad because of her boyfriend Ronnie. Annoyed, Wendy says that she never wanted to study at any of those institutions, but during the conversation, she comes across a birthday card from Michael, and discovers that she had forgotten the date. Quickly, the young girl runs to her younger brother, and after singing a quick happy birthday song to the boy, she asks him to accept a ride to his school. Halfway there, Wendy notices that Michael doesn't seem to be feeling happy, and to cheer him up, she plays one of his favorite songs on the radio so that they can sing along for the whole trip. When he arrives at school, the boy meets up with his friend Joey, and after saying goodbye to his older sister, he sets off towards his classroom. Far away, a sinister figure begins to apply various kinds of makeup around her body, after which she uses a compound called pixie dust on herself. At that moment, a man starts to look outside through the window and says that the time for collection has finally arrived. So the pair get into a Neverland-themed van, and together they set off to make yet another capture for the fairy tale island. In the city center, Wendy arrives at the beauty salon where she works with her friends Mia and Mel, and her boss is furious, saying that if she is late again, she will have her salary cut. At work, the young woman tells her about the letter she received from the university, and Mia says that her friend doesn't need to worry, as she can just turn down the invitation to live with Ronnie in peace. However, Wendy explains that her boyfriend has been behaving strangely over the last few days, and isn't even answering her calls. Mia and Mel then reveal that they are planning to go on an outdoor camping trip with the whole group of friends, and try to encourage the girl to take part. Sometime later, in a small store in the area, the clerk is organizing the counter before closing up store, when he notices that another customer has just come in. The man then alerts the customer that the place is already closed, without even imagining that it is none other than Peter. who is choosing a new scary mask to wear during his next hunt. The attendant asks his customer to leave once again, but noticing the man's strange movements, the employee tries to get closer to find out what he's up to. Realizing that Peter was about to leave without paying for the mask, the man draws his attention, and before he can react, he is quickly attacked by the man, who strikes several blows with the blade to his neck. With one more victim eliminated, the criminal cleans his knife and leaves the place quietly, leaving the body of the attendant abandoned in the middle of the establishment. At school, Michael is having lunch in the cafeteria and is suddenly surprised by Carl, who starts making fun of him on his birthday. Annoyed, Joey interrupts the boy, and after being reprimanded, he decides to leave. After scaring Carl off, the pair start planning a movie night to celebrate Michael's birthday, and to get him even more excited, Joey gives him a personalized photograph. At the end of the day, Wendy waits outside the school for her brother to leave, without even realizing that the boy is returning home alone on his bicycle, which was left there by the mysterious van from Neverland. The problem is that in the middle of the journey, the student ends up colliding with a steel wire, which has been positioned on the road to force him to crash his bike. As he gets up, Michael comes across the Neverland van, and after realizing that he might be in danger, he carefully tries to get away. Despite this, the boy is easily captured by Peter, who grabs him with his arms and throws him into the vehicle. After noticing her brother's disappearance, Wendy goes to the school principal, but the woman says that the student has already left the school and that she will contact her if she has any news. Far away, Michael wakes up in an extremely frightening place, and when he looks at his cell phone, he realizes that it has no signal, so he can't call for help. At that moment, the boy is surprised by the man who captured him, and after approaching, he removes his mask, introducing himself as none other than Peter Pan. Noticing the sinister appearance of the criminal, Michael is terrified and can't even answer him. At home, Wendy and her family join the town detective to try and find out something about her brother's disappearance, but just then, the phone starts ringing. When she picks up the phone, she hears a circus song, causing her to become confused and ask who is on the other end of the call. Noticing her daughter's strange behavior, Mary grabs Wendy's device and starts asking who is doing this. What they don't realize is that it's none other than Peter, who claims he's going to take Michael to his dream Neverland. Upon hearing this, Wendy becomes extremely terrified, and Mary tells him that she will not allow anything bad to happen to her children. During the night, Peter goes to the room where Michael is and explains that he can't sleep, so they can play a game to pass the time. The criminal then asks the boy to count to 10, while he runs to hide. Suspicious, Michael leaves the room where he was being held, and noticing that Peter is at the end of the corridor, he runs in the opposite direction, and arrives at a room full of mannequins. In a few seconds, the boy comes across a locked window, but when he tries to open the lock, he ends up dropping a glass container, which shatters when it falls to the ground. Frightened, Michael tries not to make any more noise, and starts looking at all the mannequins that are scattered around him. At that moment, the young man is surprised by Peter, who was camouflaging himself between the sheets, and after giving the boy quite a fright, the creature finds Joey's photograph. Excited, he asks if Michael would like to have his friend with him in that place, and the student begs him not to. Trying to calm him down, Peter explains that he won't be doing that, as his most special target is already here and will be taken to Neverland soon. The next day, Wendy meets with Mel and Joey so that they can find a way to locate Michael. The young woman reveals that she has found an address for a person in the town of Ashdown, who seems to have experienced the same attacks as the evil Peter Pan, and says that they will be able to find out more about the criminals. When they arrive at the scene, the trio are met by a man who tells them that his son Timmy has also been captured by the criminals. The old man explains that a few years ago, the boy set off in the direction of his school friend's house, who lived a few blocks away, but as the hours passed, he didn't return. Concerned, the man tried to contact his son's friend, but the young man's parents said he hadn't even turned up at their house. Despite this, Timmy's father says that he still has faith that the boy can be found, and hopes that the same will happen to Michael. A long way away, the schoolchildren leave on the school bus as usual, but halfway there, the driver comes across a van parked on the road, and decides to get off to investigate the situation. Noticing the man's presence, Peter Pan uses his knife to attack him, knocking him out in a few seconds. Soon after, the criminal enters the school bus, and after removing his mask, he asks who is interested in traveling to Neverland, causing all the students to become terrified. Meanwhile, Michael receives a visit from another criminal, who introduces himself as none other than TINKERBELL. Curious, the boy asks why Peter Pan is always coughing, as if he were very ill. TINKERBELL explains that the creature is getting closer and closer to returning to Neverland, which is why he's collecting as many victims as possible so that they can leave for the island before it's too late. Upon hearing this, Michael wonders why the sinister fairy is still wandering around in the real world, since he could be living in the magical dimension without any problems. Trying to calm the boy down, TINKERBELL revealed that he was different from the other targets who had been captured, and so that he could fulfill his dream of living in Neverland, he began to follow Peter's instructions. At home, Wendy meets her brother John, who appears in a state of complete despair. Noticing the young man's panic, the girl asks him what's going on, and he reveals that a large group of young people have been eliminated during a trip on his school bus. In the hideout, Peter Pan begins to have several lapses from the attacks he has just carried out, at which point he comes face to face with a shadowy silhouette, who orders him to hurry up and fulfill his objective. The creature then begins to rise into the air, and he claims that he will send his victims to Neverland that night. At the same time, TINKERBELL appears and questions Peter about where the victims are really sent. Annoyed, Peter explains that the man already knows where the boys are sent, and orders the fairy never to dare ask him again. Frightened, Tink apologizes for what he said, and hearing grunts coming from his basement, the man goes downstairs and begins to strike one of his prisoners, saying that he doesn't want to hear any noise. Later, Wendy decides to spend the night at her friend Mel's house, and they say goodbye to Joey, who is going to bed with his parents. What they don't realize is that Peter Pan is hiding outside the house, devising his plan to capture the boy. When everyone goes to bed, the criminal begins to circle the house, managing to find a way into the living room, where he comes across Mel asleep on the sofa. Upon waking up, the girl is faced with Peter about to eliminate her, and before she can react, she is hit by dozens of blows from the blade, causing her to scream in despair. In her room, Wendy begins to hear screams, and when she looks through the crack in the door, she sees Mel's father being finished off by the criminal, who makes several attacks on his back. Terrified, the young woman hides all her belongings around the room, and after turning off the lights, she runs to hide. Soon afterwards, Peter Pan enters the room looking for more victims, but Wendy is not found as she has managed to hide outside the window. Trying to find a way to escape the place, the survivor walks to Mel's parents' room, and as she approaches the corridors, she is surprised by her friend's mother. Panicked, the woman asks Wendy to untie her hands, but when she notices that Peter is about to attack her, she asks the young woman to run away and rescue Joey as soon as possible. So the girl hides behind her bed and watches as her friend's mother is attacked by the creature, which faces the family portrait after eliminating its victim. A few seconds later, Wendy realizes that Joey has already been captured by Peter Pan, and so that she can avenge the boy's family, she decides to chase them with her vehicle. When they arrive at the scene, the criminals begin to take the boy to their secret hiding place, and after taking his cell phone, the young woman prepares to break in. Inside, Michael is surprised by the pair, and after allowing Joey to reunite with his friend once again, they decide it's time to take him to Neverland. The boy tries to stop his friend from being taken away, but ends up being held down by TINKERBELL, who asks him not to resist the creature's orders. Joey then tries to run away from Peter Pan, and noticing the chase going on around the house, Wendy grabs one of the knives from the kitchen and prepares to attack the man. However, the young woman is found by TINKERBELL, who is terrified to see an invader. In a panic, Wendy begs the criminal to allow her to rescue her brother, because all she wants is to have him back home. Despite being frightened, TINKERBELL orders her to flee the scene with Michael as quickly as possible, and tries to hide his fear as Peter Pan passes by carrying Joey in his arms. A few minutes later, the criminals sit down at the dinner table, and to stop the fairy questioning their goals, the man orders him to use the fairy dust compound once again. Before TINKERBELL could use the compound, the pair heard Wendy's cell phone ring, and she received a call from Ronnie. Furious, Peter Pan runs towards Michael's room, and when she hears the criminal approaching, the young girl hides behind the furniture. Upon arriving in the room, the man questions the boy about who was there, and says that if he doesn't answer, he will be eliminated with his own hands. Taking advantage of Peter Pan's distraction, Wendy pushes one of the objects towards him, causing it to fall to the ground and allowing the pair to flee the scene. However, they end up being intercepted by TINKERBELL, and he threatens to eliminate Michael's older sister, who begs him not to do it. When she hears the criminal's name, Wendy says she knows it's Timmy, and reveals that his father is still waiting for his return, and has left his room untouched for dozens of years. Thrilled, TINKERBELL tells her that all he ever wanted was to return home, and orders the pair to flee before it's too late. The youngsters then run for cover, and during their escape, Wendy finds Peter Pan's secret cellar, where she comes across Joey, who has been imprisoned in a coffin. At the same time, Michael hides under the dining table and uses his cell phone to call the authorities, allowing the conversation between the criminals to be picked up by the attendant. Tired of all the actions his fairy assistant has taken, Peter Pan says that he doesn't deserve to go to Neverland because he's just a spoiled, cheating boy. Before he could react, TINKERBELL was thrown against the dining table, after which the criminal began to break the assistant's arms with his bare hands. Despite being extremely terrified, Michael tries to keep quiet as he witnesses Peter Pan removing TINKERBELL's arms. On the other side, Wendy manages to find an exit at the back of the house, and orders Joey to run away so that he can call for help. Soon after, the young woman is surprised by a creature that has a hook in place of one of its arms and is chained up in a dirty place. In shock at what she is witnessing, Wendy promises that she will bring help, and rushes to Michael's rescue. Suddenly, the young woman is attacked by the criminal, who destroys part of his victim's hand with his teeth. Terrified, Wendy runs into the kitchen, and no matter how many objects she throws at the man, he doesn't give up and throws her to the floor. In order to encourage the survivor, TINKERBELL asks her not to give up the fight, and the young girl cries as Peter Pan finishes off his fairy assistant by destroying his head with his feet. Before she could be eliminated by the criminal, Wendy hit the man's neck with the fairy dust compound, causing the creature to start to get stunned. Taking advantage of the distraction, the young woman runs away, but in the middle of the path, she ends up stepping on a shard of glass, which prevents her from moving. In order to keep running, Wendy uses a piece of tape to cover the wound and hides while Peter Pan breaks down the door to reach her. Quickly, the survivor hits the criminal with a surprise attack, after which she rushes off to try and rescue her brother. However, Michael ends up being found by Peter Pan, but before he can eliminate the boy, he is surprised by Wendy, who holds him down with a baseball bat. Despite this, the man manages to beat the survivor with ease and throws a glass box in her direction. In order to escape, she kicks the man in the face and throws one of the shelves at him, allowing her to move away and remove a large shard of glass from her neck. The problem is that Peter Pan is still alive, and he chases his victim into the kitchen, but before he can be attacked, the survivor hits him over the head with a plank of wood. The man then puts on his mask and begs her not to hurt him. However, Wendy is still furious and strikes Peter Pan's head repeatedly, making him hold it. To immobilize him, the young woman hits his eyes with her hands, allowing Michael to attack him several times, destroying his enemy's face. Soon afterwards, the brothers hug each other in relief, and before he can get up, Peter Pan is captured by one of his prisoners, who takes him into the dark corridors to get his long-awaited revenge. Finally, the pair wait for the authorities to arrive, and a few days later, Michael's family is happily celebrating his birthday when the phone starts ringing. Excited, Wendy asks her brother to continue enjoying the party, and answers the call expecting to hear her father's voice. However, the young girl begins to hear the circus music once again, and discovers that even after all that, Peter Pan is still alive, so that he can continue his evil mission. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.